With that broken leg and that man's name, you are just a liability now. Take this $50 and go to a shelter. You are expired. My sister Isabel didn't just say those words. She punctuated them by kicking my only suitcase down the front stairs into the mud. I stood there balancing on my crutches, my leg still in a heavy cast from the car accident that killed our parents just 3 days ago. She flicked a plastic gift card at my chest, refusing to look me in the eye. Instead, she was frantically tearing through the mailbox, her hands shaking violently. That's when I realized she wasn't just being cruel. She was terrified. She was hiding something. And she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Have you ever been treated like a burden by the very people you sacrificed everything for? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. To understand why I didn't scream, you have to understand the silence I lived in for 28 years. In the Sterling family, noise was reserved for Isabel. She was the firework, the show pony, the one who sucked all the oxygen out of the room. I was the ventilation system, invisible, essential, and only noticed when I stopped working. My name is Manfred, I know. It sounds like a middle-aged German man who works in a deli. It was a clerical error on my birth certificate that my father never bothered to fix because he was too busy mourning the fact that I wasn't the son he wanted. Isabel used that name like a whip. She called me Fred in front of her friends. She introduced me as the clerical error. She made sure I knew that my existence was an administrative mistake. But while Isabel was busy curating her life on Instagram, I was in the back office saving our parents from bankruptcy. I am a forensic accountant. I speak the language of hidden money. For 5 years, I spent my nights under the fluorescent hum of my desk lamp, fighting off IRS audits and negotiating payment plans with vendors because Isabel had drained the operating accounts again. I remember one night specifically. It was 2 years ago. I was staring at a spreadsheet, realizing we were 3 days away from missing payroll for our 40 employees. I had to liquidate my own 401k to cover the gap. At that exact moment, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Isabel. She had just posted a photo from a yacht in Tulum, holding a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Manifesting abundance." She didn't manifest anything. She stole it from the payroll account I was bleeding myself dry to replenish. That was the dynamic. I fixed the leaks. She drilled new holes. But the moment that truly sealed her fate happened 3 days ago in the hospital. Our parents were in the ACU, hooked up to machines that beeped in a terrifying rhythmic unison. I was in a wheelchair because of my broken leg trying to sign "Do not resuscitate" forms with a trembling hand. I was trying to give them a dignified end. Isabel wasn't looking at them. She was in the hallway, screaming at a man in a gray suit. That man was Mr. Vance, our family's attorney for 30 years. He was a good man, a careful man. He was trying to explain to her that the trust funds were frozen until the death certificates were issued. "I don't care about the protocol," Isabel shrieked, her voice echoing off the sterile hospital tiles. "I need to put a deposit down on the venue for the wake. Do you know how hard it is to book the Renaer Club on short notice? I need a lawyer who gets things done, not a dinosaur." She fired him right there. She fired the man who had written our parents' wills while our mother was taking her last breaths in the next room. I saw Mr. Vance's face crumble. Not from anger, but from humiliation. He looked at me through the glass of the ICU door. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just watched him pack his briefcase and walk away, leaving us alone with a predator. Isabel walked back into the room, checked her reflection in the darkened window inside. "Finally, now we can get someone who actually knows how to handle money." She looked at me, sitting there in my wheelchair, holding our mother's cold hand. "Don't look at me like that, Manfred. One of us has to be practical. You're just there like furniture. I'm the one who has to manage the image of this family." That was the moment the sadness left me. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I realized she wasn't a sister. She was a liability. And in my line of work, you don't argue with liabilities. You liquidate them. I didn't know then that the $50 card she threw in the mud would be the key to everything. I didn't know that Mr. Vance wasn't just gone, he was waiting. And I certainly didn't know that the clerical error was about to balance the books once and for all. I ended up at the Starlight Motel, a place that smelled of stale cigarette smoke and bleach. It was the only place I could afford with the $50 limit on my own emergency credit card before I hit the cap. I spent that first night shivering next to a radiator that rattled like a dying engine, drying my mud-soaked funeral dress because it was the only thing I owned. The next morning, hunger woke me up before the sun did. I reached for the plastic card Isabel had thrown at me, intending to buy a vending machine breakfast. That's when I actually looked at it. It wasn't a gift card. There was no magnetic strip, no Visa logo. It was a thick white plastic key card with a generic Blue Mountain logo and a 4-digit code written in Sharpie on the back. 1995, my birth year. I knew that logo. Sophie keeps storage. My father kept a private box, therefore sensitive documents. I spent my last $12 on an Uber to the facility. Getting down the hallway on crutches was a nightmare. The floor was slick linoleum, and every swing of my body sent a jolt of fire up my fractured leg. But when I swiped the card and typed in the code, the heavy metal door of box 404 popped open with a mechanical hiss. Inside, there was no cash, no jewelry, just a single manila envelope. I tore it open. It was a life insurance policy, a key man policy my father had taken out on himself years ago, separate from the estate. The beneficiary wasn't Isabel. It wasn't the business. It was me. $300,000. I stared at the paper, my breath clouding in the cold storage room. This was my escape hatch. This was a condo in a different city, a new car, a master's degree. This was freedom. I called the insurance agent immediately, my hand shaking as I held the phone to my ear. Miss Sterling, the agent said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I am so relieved you called. Your sister Isabel tried to claim this policy yesterday morning. He was extremely aggressive, but I told her the beneficiary designation is ironclad. I closed my eyes. Isabel had tried to steal my inheritance before the dirt on our parents' graves was even settled. When can I access the funds? I asked. Since the coroner's report is already filed, I can process it today. But due to anti-money laundering regulations on large transfers, the check will take 3 business days to clear. 3 days. I didn't have 3 days. I didn't have $3. I went back to the motel. That tiny room became my war room. For 72 hours, I lived in a state of suspended animation. I had a check for $300,000 in my bag, but I was eating peanut butter crackers from the vending machine for dinner. I drank tap water from the bathroom sink. I wedged a chair under the doorknob at night because the lock looked flimsy. My stomach cramped with hunger, but my mind was sharper than it had ever been.